Hello everybody, it's Nick here with Nick Tolman Music, and today we're going to go ahead and continue our beginner guitar lesson series using the Leonard guitar method, book 1. Let's get started. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at page 32 today here in the Leonard Guitar Method Book 2. And on page 32 we are going to learn one song and one song only. And this is by far the longest piece of music that we've learned in the book. It also will probably be the most challenging to this point in the book. That being said, all of the concepts in this song we have learned. So everything here is kind of like a cumulative review point. To me, this is like the first real major landmark in the book. Once you can kind of play this, it really is a good spot to be. With me and my students, this is oftentimes really an important spot to make sure and kind of gauge all right, are we up to speed? If this is overly challenging for you, it's kind of a point to go back and maybe do some reviewing and making sure that everything up to this point is really solid, that we have these foundations under control. All right, so the song that we're learning in this lesson is the Spangled Banner, which obviously is not super commonly played on guitar unless you're familiar with the Jimi Hendrix version, which I'm sure some of you are, but it works for what we are trying to accomplish in this book at this point, right? Before we get started with the lesson, I would like to remind you to head on over and check out my Patreon page if you haven't already. Becoming a patron of Nick Tolman Music is a great way to say thank you for the content that you're receiving here on YouTube, but it's also a great way to receive some extra content and some extra perks that might help you along your journey, including a weekly guitar series where I answer questions from my patrons to help them with the things that they are struggling with, the things that they're working on. So as a patron, you have that access to that. You also get access to early guitar lesson content. Lessons that are coming here on YouTube go early on Patreon. So if you're following along and you want to hit those as soon as you can get that access early on Patreon. So go ahead and head on over and check that out and consider becoming a patron today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the Spangled Banner. So as we look at this today, we notice a few things. First off, we are in the key of C. So the last few lessons, we've been doing some stuff in the key of G where we've used F sharps. Right now, we are actually in the key of C. However, you will notice that there still are some F sharps in the song. They are just kind of borrowed. The song kind of modulates into the key of G for a moment and then comes back. It's actually, this version is in the key of C. All right. Also, we are in 3/4 time, right? The Spangled Banner is usually performed in 3/4 time. There have been some versions out there that are in 4/4 time. The famous Whitney Houston Spangled Banner, if you've ever seen that, when she performed it at Super Bowl halftime back in the early 90s, I think. It's phenomenal. She killed it, but that was in 4/4 time. Usually it's in 3/4 time. All right, you'll notice again there are some F sharps. It really is utilizing almost the whole range of the instrument that we have learned so far. It doesn't venture down into the 6th string, but it does use notes on the 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. It really is moving all the way around the instrument. There are chords listed on this song. However, there are several chords on here that you have not learned yet. That doesn't mean that you can't work on them, but we're not going to cover them in this lesson because we haven't learned them yet in the book. I will play the chords for you so you can see how the melody sounds with them, and so you can practice the melody along with those chords. But at this point, you haven't learned all these chords. All right, so we're going to go ahead and set the metronome at 72. This is a really common tempo for this song. It's actually performed kind of in a wide range of tempos, but 72 actually works pretty well. So we're just going to kind of stay here for this lesson and talk about it at this tempo. I'm going to play it for you, and then we will dive into it. I will walk you through it measure by measure and help you with this song. So here we go. Star Spangled Banner at 72 on the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2. There we go. All right, so that's the melody of the Star Spangled Banner at 72 on the metronome. Let's go ahead and talk about this and walk through this a little bit. All right, so starting out at the beginning, we have those pickups. So we start on beat 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2. Now, what you'll notice is that first measure is really just outlining a C chord. You can play that entire beginning all the way up into the first note of the second measure, actually the second note of the second measure, all with just a C chord shape. Okay? So being aware of that might help you as you're trying to get those fingers if you're kind of like, oh, this is so jumpy and weird. Just thinking of it in that C shape might help you with that, okay? So again, starting at the beginning, all of that is just based off of a C chord. Then we've got some more eighth notes. Now, traditionally what I find with a lot of my students is that's kind of one of the tricky spots, is that jump. So going into the third full measure, those eighth notes right before the third full measure. Again, that C to that E, that's kind of the funny skip, right? I might just take that third full measure and just loop that. Until it's feeling more and more comfortable, and then go back just a little bit. Maybe a little farther. Right, I kind of isolated that problem spot, hit it, and then kind of expanded outward a little bit to get the stuff around it, kind of just to put it in context of what's happening in the music. Then moving on, pickups into now this is the second line. That's just walking right down the notes. Again, it's just a C chord. You can play all of that whole line there in the third, starting in the third measure of the second line with just a C chord shape. Now, you don't necessarily want to just set your C chord and do that because it's all going to ring together, but you can just kind of keep that in mind, that that's the shape that's happening there. And again, all that is based off of a C chord. Yeah, from the third measure of the second line all the way to the third line. That's all just a C chord. My left hand didn't even move at all. So just again, being aware of that is going to help you hopefully have that feel not as awkward. Okay, so moving on, third line, we've got the C, we've got the same skip that we had up before. This is all the same. Again, C chord. Now, in the fourth line, going into the third measure of the fourth line is when it starts to change. But luckily, this part is actually really easy. No skips, it's just walking up and down the notes on those upper strings. And the same skip that we had before. C, E, F sharp, G. Right? So again, if you've really drilled that skip, that is easier again because it happens a third time here. And then moving on here in the second to last line. And then this last measure of the second to last line. Right? Another spot that kind of can sometimes be a little bit of a problem, but only just because it's a bunch of eighth notes, right? So again, a spot that you might just have to kind of isolate, take it a little slower if you need to. Build up the speed. And then this, all right? So you notice the second note of the last line, there is a fancy little symbol up above the note and above the chord symbol that has a word that says pause with an arrow. Now, what that symbol is, it's kind of like a semicircle with a dot underneath of it. That is called a fermata. And what a fermata is basically what it says. It's a pause. It's a pause in the music. Essentially, it means that you can hold that note as long as you want. If you're playing all by yourself, it's just you, you're not playing with anyone, you literally can hold that note as long as you want. Before you go on. Now, if you're playing with other people, somebody has to be in charge of telling you how long to hold the note. That's where like conductors who are leading the music, they'll hold it, bum, 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 before they go on. Or if you're playing like in a band, maybe you have the lead vocalist who holds the note and then cues the band to go on to the next thing, or maybe the guitarist says that, or the drummer, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Somebody's in charge of determining how long we're going to hold that note. But it is held out. It's a fermata. We can hold it as long as we want. If you are practicing with a metronome, you'll notice when I played it, I just held it for 2 beats on the metronome just because I wanted to keep the metronome going. But in real life, there's no time associated with it. It's just held out until you feel like you like it, and then you move on. All right? So that's what a fermata is. So again, last line, fermata. And that's that. All right, it's not too challenging. There are a couple things that are a little bit funny, but once you kind of identify and get those things ironed out, it kind of works itself out. The first being just those passages where we can really utilize that C chord shape, like the very beginning. Being aware of that C chord shape. The other thing is that big skip that happens in the third full measure. Happens 3 times in the song, and if you spend some time on it early on, it shouldn't be a problem for you in any of those locations. So make sure that you spend some time on that. And then the last thing is working on that little eighth note passage, going into the last line, and then hitting that fermata. It's kind of the last funny thing that can oftentimes give students problems. So I'm going to go ahead and play the chords for you so you can practice playing this along with them, and so you can hear what it sounds like with the chords. So here we go. Here is the chords and melody together at 72 on the metronome, Star Spangled Banner. One, two, three, 1 and 2. Alright, so there's the melody and the chords together for the Star Spangled Banner. Hope you found this lesson helpful. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or otherwise, please leave them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer those for you. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so, and we will see you next time. Thanks.